Hello and welcome back to the Element HYPR-7 video series. We're on part 5, and in this one we're going to be running through the process of zeroing your scope. Now the HYPR-7, as you may remember from part 1, functions very differently to a traditional scope in terms of how the reticle actually moves. On a traditional scope you have mechanical turrets physically moving an erector tube around, and in doing so also moving the reticle around. In the HYPR-7, the reticle is digitally displayed on what we call a canvas, and the computer inside the scope tells the scope where to display the reticle. At the core, the concept is exactly the same. When you dial, let's say, 1 MOA up and 2 MOA right on a traditional scope, the turrets mechanically move the reticle to a new position. We could equate this to hydraulic controls on an aircraft. The pilot moves his controls, and in response, the control surfaces on the aircraft's wings move as well, but they are physically connected by hydraulic lines. The HYPR-7 would be more like the modern fly-by-wire systems in an aircraft where, as the pilot moves his controls, a sensor detects the movement, sends a signal to a processor, and the processor tells the control surfaces where to move. This is kind of how the HYPR-7 works. The processor tells the reticle what position it needs to be on the canvas, and when you save your zero, this is physically written to the chip and stored. The HYPR-7's digital display gives us so much flexibility when it comes to the reticle and how it moves, and we've discussed this in previous videos, but what does the zeroing process actually look like? There are two ways to do this. The first is using the Element Ballistics app. The second is within the scope itself. We're going to start first by showing you how to do it with the app. With the scope on and the app open, you'll see the HYPR-7. Click on it, that'll open the configuration screen, and from here you can select zeroing. Make sure you're on the correct profile on the scope before you begin this process, and make sure that the zeroing range in your profile is the same as the range that you are physically zeroing at. You can hold in the mode select button to take you back to your zeroing range, and you should see ZR appear next to the distance in the display. You'll see the zeroing procedure listed quite nicely here on the zeroing screen. The first thing you're going to do, especially if you've mounted the scope on a new gun and you're starting from scratch with zeroing, is to physically center the reticle. It's just going to give you a good starting point from which you can then move it around. So hit center reticle, and there you go. Your reticle will shift right back to the center. If you do have a bore sighting device like a laser bore sighter or a collimator, this is a pretty good place to start. If you don't have that but you are struggling to get on paper, you can start at a much closer range like 25 or 50 meters at a nice big target to kind of get yourself close and move further out. But for the purposes of this video, let's just talk about the actual zeroing process at the distance you want to zero at. When you're ready to zero, you can take a shot downrange at your target, and unless you're very lucky, your point of impact should be offset from your point of aim. You need to now shift the reticle to the position of the bullet hole. You can do this by using the left, right, up and down buttons on the app, and you should see a secondary reticle move. Make sure that your original reticle is still centered on your point of aim, and get the secondary reticle right on top of your point of impact. Then hit confirm. Take another 1 or 2 confirmation shots just to make sure everything's correct, and then make fine adjustments if you need to. But that's pretty much it. Remember that each profile has a separate zero. So if you set up a different profile, let's say for a different bullet weight out of the same rifle, you will need to zero again for that separate profile. You'll see that there is also an option to reset your levels. The HYPR-7 has a built-in cant indicator, basically like a digital bubble level, and it should be calibrated right out the box. But if you want to recalibrate, let's say against a plumb line that you've hung down range, you can hit reset. You can also use a bubble level rested on the battery cap if you have one. What if you've left your phone at home? Well, you don't need your phone to zero the HYPR-7. If you need to zero out in the field using only the scope, you can do this, and it's pretty easy. With the scope turned on, you're going to hit the power button to access the main menu. You're going to go down to zeroing, and you're going to select this, and from here it's essentially the same process as on your phone. Except this time, instead of using buttons on the app to move the reticle left, right, up and down, you're going to use the input dial. First, you're going to move up or down, and once you've got the position you want, hit the power button again, and your dial will now move the reticle left or right. With your new zero where you want it, press the power button again to confirm, and there you go. This is actually arguably much quicker and easier than doing it through the app. Now, there's one more thing that we need to discuss, and that is a situation where your point of impact is so far up or down on your canvas that it's actually right on the edge of your display. You don't want that. You want your zero to be more or less 2/3 up your display on the canvas, leaving plenty of space at the bottom to actually show where your predictive point of impact is going to be at longer ranges. Well, that's where the adjustable mount comes into play. This allows you to mechanically tilt the scope up or down to center your canvas better. This is particularly useful with air guns or rimfires where you're actually zeroing at much closer ranges. This forces your scope to have to tilt down more to meet your bore line, and that is where a lot of issues come in. This can also happen with spring air guns where you get your barrel drooping, although I highly doubt many people are going to be putting this on a spring air gun. But the point is, the adjustable mount is there, and it's a very, very useful tool to actually keep your scope optically centered no matter where your point of impact is. To do this, loosen the 2 hex screws beneath the base, shift the mount forward or backward, and then tighten in a new position. Be careful to only move small amounts at a time. I would expect that you would hardly ever need more than 20 to 40 MOA unless there's a serious alignment issue with your base and barrel. And that is all you need to know about zeroing. In the next episode, we're going to be discussing reticles, and you're not going to want to miss that one, particularly when we talk about the live BDC reticle, which is an absolute game changer. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you then.